Phase Zero, back with you for another bonus episode. I'm Jenna Anderson, and I am joined by Jamie Jurack.
Hello, thanks for everyone who's listening live. What's up?
And Aaron Perrine.
It feels like Christmas. Oh, man. And we're going to get Christmas again in a couple weeks.
It feels like Christmas, but it also feels like January 2021 in a lot of ways, or in the weirdest possible way. We are, in honor of Agatha All Along, in honor of the Ultron news that dropped last week that we're going to be talking about on Wednesday's show, in honor of just a lot of things. We are going back to the beginning of Phase 4 and of Phase 0 itself, and we are rewatching WandaVision. Aaron and I were not part of the show the entire WandaVision era originally, so you guys get to hear our reactions to each episode, to the specific stuff for the first time. Jamie has watched this show more times than I can count. I know she has the count in her head, but I'm very excited to hear after all these watches later how Jamie feels as well. So
I have to say, I'm a little nervous about the fact that, like, a lot of our listeners have been with us since day one, and they know they probably have you guys know us so well. You're really good about that. I have no idea what I said in these early episodes. I'm like, I could contradict myself. I could say the exact same thing again. I'm like, don't listen too closely. I'm like, oh no, we're all back here again. But one of our listeners said on Twitter that back in those early days, I was, quote, really quiet. And I was like,
Aww.
Me? Wow. So if nothing else, I'll be more enthusiastic. I'll be more myself than I was those years ago. But I am a little like, oh no, what if I say something different or the same?
If people take the time to figure that out and call you out on it, then that's the least of your worries. You're totally fine.
Right.
But so we're going to run this the way that we've run a lot of our rewatch episodes. Thank you to everyone who watched our X-Men ones in the lead up to Deadpool and Wolverine. We're going to try to do this a little bit similarly, even though this is the first show we've really done a rewatch for. We're going to start with a Jamie recap, and then we're going to do a breakdown of each episode, Easter eggs, notes that I had, and stuff like that. And then we're going to, all of these years later, give the review score for the first 3 episodes of WandaVision as if we are talking about it for the first time. Did you guys even do review scores for the WandaVision era? Yeah, okay. So then these will be Phase Zero's first inaugural numerical ratings of the first 3 episodes of WandaVision. But yeah, so without further ado, Jamie, take it away.
Okay, wow. Here we go. First 3 episodes of WandaVision on the clock. It starts out, who is this? A newlywed couple? Wanda and Vision moving to Westview, New Jersey? Oh, they're an unusual couple. Look at him. He's carrying her inside, but Opie forgets he's magic and he walks through and she goes plop right in the floor. Boop, boop, boop. Oh, let's watch the Ottoman. We know what that's from. Oh, kissy, kissy. We're having a great time. It's the 1950s. And what's going on? Oh, they're like, oh yeah, here we are having our lovely life in this black and white world. And then it's like, there's a heart on the thing. It's August 23rd. What does this mean? Oh, heart, I don't know. Okay, well, neither of us know. Oh, what's gonna happen? And then Vision's like, I'm going to work. And then he's like, changes his face into human form because the people of the town don't know his situation. And then goes to work and he's like, hey, Norm, you're my work buddy. What do we do here? You're such a cut up Vision. And he's like, I really don't know what I do here, but I'm really good at it because I'm a computer. No, I'm not. And then his boss comes out, and he's like, hey, guess what? We're coming over for dinner tonight, remember? Because our name is Mr. Hart and Mrs. Hart. Meanwhile, back at home, Wanda's like, tra-la-la, I'm a housewife. Oh, it's 1950s. And then all of a sudden, a knock on the door. Who's this? Agnes? Her neighbor? Oh, what a silly lady. She's got a husband she hates. Isn't that hilarious? And she's like, oh, what's this date? Oh, it's probably our anniversary. Okay, so Wanda, she gets ready for an anniversary. Meanwhile, Vision calls and he's like, I'm worried about tonight. And she's like, why are you worried about it tonight? And it's a miscommunication because we're living in a sitcom, baby. And then, all right, so the scene is set. All of a sudden, Vision comes home with the hearts. Wanda comes down in the lingerie, negligee type nighty gown. And she's like, oh, it's me. Who are these people in our house? Oh my God, your bosses are here. I thought it was their anniversary. Why do you think it was their? Oh no. And then Wanda's like, it's okay. I can do this. And she goes to try to cook and it's mayhem. Oh, Agnes comes back. I'll help you. I'm a housewife. I know things. And they're like, oh no. And then the heart's like, oh, taking forever. But it all works out. We're having breakfast for dinner. And then, oh no, Mr. Hart, he starts to choke. And then it gets really scary. And Mrs. Hart's like, stop it. And then Wanda's like, Vision, help him. And he's like, saved, and it's really weird. And then it's like, oh, that was so much fun. Let's make today our anniversary. Yay! Episode 1 over. Episode 2, oh, it's a little different. Now we're in the 60s. WandaVision, what division? And then it's like, oh, now we wear pants in this world. And they're like, oh, we're putting on a magic show. We're glamour. We're vision. But we're not going to use our real magic because in magic shows they don't use real magic. And meanwhile, there's a sound happening outside. And Vision's like, I'm going to join the neighborhood watch. So he goes over to all the dudes and he's like, hey, dudes. And they're a little like, oh, I don't know if we can trust you, but oh, you're pretty cool, dude. You know how to have a joke. Have a piece of gum. So Vision has a piece of gum and he's like, oh no, he's goofy now because he's gumming up the works. And they go up to the talent show. Oh no, but before all that, Wanda has a meeting over at Dottie's house. She's not very nice. She's devilish. Could that mean something? Probably not. And some things are happening in the thing. And Dottie's kind of mean. And all of a sudden on the radio, Wanda, who's that? Sounds familiar. I think I know that voice. And she's freaking out. And all of a sudden Dottie cuts herself and the blood is red. But now it's time for the magic show. Vision's being kooky, but it works. They're hilarious. They're a hit. The town of Westview loves them. They come home and they're like, yeah, we did it. We live in New Jersey. But then, what's that banging sound? Oh, they go outside and then all of a sudden, oh no. It's a beekeeper. What's happening? And then Wanda goes, no. Rewind. And then, by the way, she's pregnant all of a sudden. How did that happen? And then they're like, oh, we're in color. We're having a baby. Happy ending. Ooh, episode 3. We're in color now, babes. Look at this. It's the 1970s. And we're having a baby. But that baby is coming fast. Oh my God. Wanda's huge. And then her pal Geraldine, who showed up in the last episode, comes over and she's like, hey girl, can I borrow a coat? Can I borrow something? No, a bucket. Because she's borrowing a bucket. Because Wanda's pregnancy is making the whole town go crazy. And they're like, oh, what's happening? It's because Wanda's having a baby. And then all of a sudden, the baby's coming. Oh, so soon? And Vision's like, oh, get the doctor. And this doctor is sexist. But what can you do? And meanwhile, Agnes is over with the neighbor Herb. And they're like, psst, 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 psst. And Agnes is like, you know that Geraldine doesn't live here, right? And Vision's like, I don't get it. And then it's like, oh, baby time. Oh, look, that's one baby. His name is Tommy. There's another baby. That's Billy. That's 2 babies. Geraldine helped. And they're all happy. And they're like, yay, we're parents in the 1970s. But then Vision goes somewhere and Wanda and Geraldine are chilling out. And Wanda's like, I used to have a twin. And Geraldine opened her stupid mouth and was like, oh yeah, he died by Ultron. And she was like, what did you just say to me? And then it was like, anger. And then what happened? I don't know. Vision comes home. Geraldine's not there anymore. And they're like, we're happy. Let's watch TV. And those are the first 3 episodes.
Bravo. Snaps for Jamie. I need a listener to edit the episodes to Jamie's, like, just without sound from the episodes. Just I need it all synced together because I think that would just be beautiful. That was so great. That was so well done. I feel like you could have done it from memory at this point, honestly, with how much
absolutely.
you rewatched the show.
Yeah. I did not need to rewatch it, but I'll take any excuse. I also have to say, I was gonna do all 3 theme songs, but the second song is such an earworm that my brain, like, I try and it just comes out the second song again. That song is just so good.
Totally get it. So before we take a break and get into kind of a breakdown of episode by episode, let's just act like the social embargo has just lifted. These first 3 episodes are out into the world. Aaron, what is your reaction to these episodes?
Oh man. So the only time I've talked about this on Phase Zero is when we did TV rankings, and it's interesting, and like also like the whole WandaVision rankings, like of like ranking episodes and like what order you enjoyed them. And I think I was the only one who has like number 1 higher than halfway up. I am a sucker for these old sitcoms. It's a staple of our household. I was, living with my grandparents. They have control of the remote, which means guess what? We're watching Lucy, we're watching Gunsmoke, we're watching, the Jeffersons and all this stuff, right? So I have and Bewitched, of course, which obviously figures into this like very heavily. So I love this. I couldn't imagine if I had been on this show when these episodes had dropped, because it's such a dramatic departure from everything else that MCU had done beforehand, that I would have probably just been caught flat-foot. Like, it was really staggering. And I love episode 1 and 2, and 3 is when it really starts to get really juicy. The unnervingness goes up. now with hindsight, we know what's going on. But I see why the entire fandom like turned themselves into knots theorizing about certain demons and other fun things and who could be what for the future of the MCU because it was so uncharted. So absolute delight to revisit all of this, the comfort of what that used to be in that era, and I'm excited to see what the rest of it, you know.
Jamie, what about you? I have a feeling you like these episodes.
Yeah, of course. I mean, WandaVision, it's no secret, is my favorite thing the MCU has ever done. It's just catered to me. Like Erin said, I love sitcoms. I grew up on classic sitcoms, and so just all the Easter eggs that come out in here. It's funny when we did this the first time. I was doing another podcast with friends where we were like deep diving into the sitcoms, and it's funny that like no one stopped me, like no one, like now I can't even like say the name of my other podcast, but at the time I was like, go listen to me talk about sitcoms over here, and everyone was like, cool. We were living in different times. But these first 3 episodes, I'll never forget watching them for the first time because I had screeners, and it was like Christmas because I remember where I was the day they announced Wanda was getting a show. I was still living in New York. I was sitting at a bar stool hosting bar trivia, and I remember the day at Comic-Con when they revealed Catherine Hahn was going to be in the show. It's like every step of the way, WandaVision has just been catered specifically to me, all the way up until giving me Agatha. And it's just amazing. And I want to address Tom in the comments asking if I love WandaVision more than Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I will say it's hard to compare those two. If I could only watch one again, I'd probably pick S.H.I.E.L.D. because it's 136 episodes versus 9. And if I'm living in a desert island, but I think WandaVision's the best thing, truly the greatest Marvel segment.
I love it. I also was not on the show at all this entire era. I joined with Falcon and Winter Soldier, but being a part of working at the website, being a part of the Marvel fandom, I know like we will get into this across the rewatch. And I know we've said this a lot on the show of just that era was so special of waking up every Wednesday morning, watching the episode, having to do it before the internet could spoil things for you. Just like there was nothing like being in that moment. But even like outside of that, even revisiting it all these years later, I'm in the same boat as the two of you. I grew up on like Nick at Night and TV Land and all of those reruns of classic stuff. And so that was really fun to see that injected here. And then even then, since these episodes originally aired, I've gotten really into watching stuff on Turner Classic Movies. And so seeing even the like cinematic influences of 40s and 50s and 60s screwball comedies in here is just amazing to see. These episodes are so much fun. They are so intricately put together. And like, I know we'll get into the specifics, but there is just so much love on display in these episodes. And it's like so nice to see something like that. So I think we all like them. It's pretty safe to say. So we're going to take a quick 1-minute break. In the meantime, let us know how you guys feel about WandaVision, if you were watching in the original era, if you've rewatched it at all in this whole process. And when we come back, we're going to do a episode by episode breakdown. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Phase Zero, where we are revisiting the first 3 episodes of WandaVision. We're just going to kind of go episode by episode. I have some notes. Everyone is more than welcome to interject here and there, and we will start with the pilot episode. first of all, happy week of Wanda and Vision's anniversary. Literally this past Friday was August 23rd, which is their anniversary as decided by this episode. It was funny, first of all, that the Ultron news dropped that day. That felt very nice on like a cosmic level. And then because Chris and I rewatched these episodes literally that night, and he had a moment of like, wait, it's their anniversary. And it's like, yes, that is exactly part of why we're watching these this day. But
Shout
yeah,
out to
it's
my
cool.
mom. My
Uh-huh.
mom's birthday is August 23rd, and like because of WandaVision now, I'll never forget her birthday.
Oh, that's awesome. That definitely helps. My also biggest takeaway, and I know I have banged this drum ad nauseum on the show. How can you watch or rewatch these episodes and not be excited for what Matt Shakman is going to do with the Fantastic Four? I like just aesthetically, technically, the way that he is able to navigate every single era in all of these episodes and do it so effortlessly and still root the characters in it, root the MCU in it. I am so glad that we have him directing First Steps, because I think these episodes revisiting them really proves he is going to knock it out of the park.
Especially the fact that when all of Wanda's magic and all that stuff is practical, and knowing that he's going to be working in a 60s space, I'm really interested to see how he like carries that over. Obviously, it's not the same. They were trying to make a genuine sitcom here. They had a live audience for a lot of it. They were doing it in that way, and they're not going to do that with Fantastic Four, obviously. But in Matt, we trust. Like truly, I'm so excited that he's the one doing this movie.
For the listeners, you should go back and rewatch if you haven't, or if you haven't seen it before, watch it for the first time. That assembled on this, the level of detail to achieve this kind of period appropriate sitcom styling, from costume to the set design to everything. Like Vision is blue in all of this because Red doesn't show up right with the makeup on camera to make him look like the movies. Stuff that just blows your mind. So it is worth a watch along with all of this too. Like, and Matt, yeah, he's probably gonna crush it. I mean, if you've seen some of the set photos, first of all, you naughty sausage, and second of all, it all looks so promising, so promising. So you can't help but feel like, I don't know, like anybody else when they were watching this, I just felt really good. Like it was really funny. Like I'm like, wow, this improved my mood. Like in less susceptible times, I would have made myself a bowl of ice cream because it was like, oh man, we're feeling great.
It was kind of hard for me because I have not watched it in one sitting since it started, and and I have counted. This is my 10th time, which really does feel low. Honestly, for me, 10 feels kind of low, but it's like I said, it's 5 hours long. But it was hard to stop. I was like, but I love episode 4. It's an exercise. I almost put on Multiverse of Madness because I'm like, I need my Wanda fix. I need more Wanda.
Put on Age of Ultron again, given the news of everything. I'm surprised you didn't.
I do that so much already, Jenna. I watched that movie so much.
I am always in awe of your commitment to rewatching things. Like, I rewatch things when I can, but I am nowhere near on the level that you are, and it is always impressive to me. But yeah, I will say, I almost wish, because I think Agatha mentions in the first episode that her and Ralph's anniversary is like early July. I almost wish they would have put out the Agatha trailer like to the day on that day, because I think that would have been really funny. Because I think it's like July 3rd or something along those lines. But
yeah, that date means something. It's from the comics. I want to say it's like something having to do with Salem. But it's been a minute since I read those. It's been since WandaVision came out.
Yes.
So.
I also have to say, it's kind of amazing to me. I know we are in a post She-Hulk world, a post Deadpool and Wolverine world, but like at the time, to hear the words seduction techniques said out loud in the MCU is kind of nuts to me. Like we've come so far at this point. We have like, crossed so many glass ceilings in that regard, but it's crazy, especially after the MCU was on such a hiatus post Endgame, to like come back and have it be able to get a little bit more adult here and there. But yeah, I have to say, I completely, because I have not rewatched this show at all. I watched it as it was airing and I had not touched it since then. I completely forgot about the advertisements, like completely and totally forgot that they were a part of the show.
I didn't put those in my recap.
But that's totally okay. And so the first one is the toaster. It's like the Stark branded toaster that has the very sinister ticking sound, which, as we now know, I won't spoil it, but we now know there's a reason why that ticking sound kind of goes across the commercials. That was just so cool to see how they worked all of those in. What did you guys think about those?
Oh, it's perfect.
Go ahead.
It works so well. It's and the way and how each one is kind of like deeply sinister, which is perfect not only for the context of this show, but just like commercials feel deeply sinister anyway. Like it's like honestly, it's like no, it's like the peak of what like the worst parts of what capitalism is, especially like when you're a kid watching TV and they're like like you're watching Nickelodeon in the 90s and they're like, here's a loud gack, oh, bright colors. And they're like trying to like brainwash you into asking your dad for a Game Boy or something. And it's just like and in this case, like the toaster is malicious. What a malicious thing to do. Because like that's just like obviously referencing Vision, and it's not nice.
There is like, I think that's the part of my brain that like really got fed by these early episodes too, is that I both love those old sitcom things, and I like, my wife will tell you my favorite genre of anything is playing with those and making them really, really subtly unnerving in the corners, not like obtusely, but like in like very rare moments. And Jamie's right about like commercials lending themselves to that kind of weird, surreal, like unnerving, vaguely threatening kind of vibe. That toaster thing reads like, and also the way that they like shot it is like two people in a hostage situation, like reading a script. It is so laced with menace that I'm like, oh wow, that really did happen. And nobody knew what it was leading towards, other than like, that was a little weird. What was going on there? And then you get it builds over time. So yeah, that those play hilariously now too. And of course, that as we go along, there are MCU Easter egg field days in even the commercials as well.
Absolutely. I just have to shout out Paul Bettany's line read of what are you wearing? What are you wearing? Like the way that he does that in the whole thing when they return home. I love that. Again, I love like good 50s, 60s romantic screwball comedies. And it's like the two of them really, really nailed it in the context of this episode. I also have to say going off. Oh, go ahead.
There's another universe where Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen are in a sitcom that runs like 7 or 8 seasons.
Yes.
Like, and it is like the most watched thing in the world. Like, because they're both, their timing is so well done in this that I'm like, I feel like I would watch 2 seasons of Wanda and Vision living in their hijinks in New Jersey, and then Catherine Hahn inevitably helping save the day for 3 seasons. Sign me up. Like, absolutely.
That would be a very expensive show. I feel like to keep this like technical budget, it would need like the GDP of a small nation to keep going, but we would all be better off for it. It would be so worth it.
I almost said something. Should I said it to a microphone? Yes, go ahead.
I have to say, this episode, the first episode, is such a perfect example to me of just good narrative tension and good set of stakes, because like the dinner with the hearts feels more intense to me than like some actual superhero battles have been. Like I feel more worried even rewatching the episode and knowing that they get out of it okay. I'm still like, oh my gosh, are they going to get out of this okay? Whereas it's like, you show me like a big CGI third act of some of these movies and I'll just be like, I know they're going to get out of this okay. But like this episode is so tense in the absolute perfect way.
When old boy goes down, we all know what happens, and it still is really unnerving.
It really is.
Go ahead.
I do want to shout out before we move on to just the specifics of the sitcom references, because this episode is clearly taking place in the 50s, and its plot is very similar to like what an I Love Lucy plot would be, like the general misunderstanding stuff. But it's a lot of this is the Dick Van Dyke Show, which is interesting because that show started in 1961. That was a 60s show, but you know, early 60s is kind of bleeding into the 50s still. And there's so many little nods. Like I said in the recap, the Ottoman is a direct call out to the opening credits of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and it's and the set does look similar too. Each set of each sitcom is not an exact replica of a show, but each one is very clearly influenced, and this is absolutely the Dick Van Dyke Show, which we will learn later is maybe arguably the most important sitcom in Wanda's life. And I want to add, remember just the tinfoil hatting of WandaVision when we really thought Dick Van Dyke was going to show up? Like there was a time when we thought Dick Van Dyke was going to roll into a Marvel show, which is why this remains one of the best eras of like, what were we thinking?
I totally forgot about that.
With them too.
Yeah, they totally they met with him. Yeah.
like they had dinner together and he explained it. And of course, I'm just trying to imagine poor Dick Van Dyke trying to grapple with the idea of she's a witch and he's a robot. Like there are these stones. What? Oh, but it sounds great. I'm sure it's fine. It made me smile to think about that.
Absolutely. I have to say, I love that the stop it in the whole scene when Hart is choking both means stop him choking and also stop the hex. I feel like now that we know the circumstances of the hex and everything, like that felt like kind of the reality slipping a little bit in a very cool way. I just love seeing that now with the hindsight of the finale. Does anyone else have any other thoughts on episode 1?
I just want to shout out Fred Milamed and Deborah Jo Rupp. Like they're just so great in this episode. Deborah Jo Rupp especially. Like this woman is just born for sitcoms. I've said it many times, but Kitty is my from that 70s show is my favorite sitcom mom of all time. And I interviewed her for WandaVision season 1, and I asked her about wearing 70s clothes versus the 50s clothes, and she hated wearing those 70s clothes, and she was really excited to get in some 50s garb, and I love that. I love that they're doing that too. Like let's get an iconic sitcom mom up in here, and I think that's awesome. And Fred's always great.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about if there's anything else like weird that sticks out. The House of M bottle that launched 1,000 ships.
Yeah.
It only poured gasoline on everybody's like theories. I was like, man, we are cooking. I remember just being in Slack with Adam Barnhart, like, we really gonna do it, buddy. We really gonna get it. And it didn't really do anything. It's just a fun thing.
Yep. Well, talking about the fun things and talking about Easter eggs, we get into episode 2 and the animated opening sequence with the theme song Jamie will not sing because it is too much of an earworm. We have a lot of Easter eggs in there. We have Bova milk, which Bova is the half human, half cow kind of midwife that births Wanda and Pietro in the comics. And she is a animal creation of the High Evolutionary. We'll get into it, but like honestly, I clowned for the longest time that Herb was going to be High Evolutionary in this show because there was a lot leading to that and a lot making me think that. And ultimately, I'm very glad that we got what we got because what we got in Guardians 3 was so good. But that was definitely a very prevailing theory that I know I and a lot of people had. But yeah, and then we also have the Grim Reaper helmet in that opening.
Morris, I want to clarify that you said that she birthed them, more of like a midwife situation.
That's what I meant, midwife. Yes.
Well, Wanda and Pietro did not come out of a cow. I just felt
being
like
a midwife, I guess like birth works as like a verb in that situation. You're helping birth them, but yeah, obviously yes, they had a human mother.
So I feel like somebody is listening, like only there's one person that heard that and was like,
thank you for helping. Yeah. But yeah, how do we feel about those Easter eggs, especially now that we know Grim Reaper is reportedly going to show up in Wonder Man? How do we feel about all of those Easter eggs in that opening sequence?
Boba was exciting for me at the time, just because, again, like I'm no Jenna, I'm no comics expert. These are the only comics that I feel really secure in my knowledge of, and but what's interesting is like I actually didn't click until I saw Guardians 3, the High Evolutionary connection, again because my knowledge is very niche, and all that is cool, and I love that we're getting stuff like this in Wonder Man because this is like it's Agatha All Along and the Vision show are very much spin-offs, but Wonder Man to me still feels like a spin-off because it's still in the pool of the Wanda and Vision. So
I mean that and the Reaper thing, I like, how I get, like every time something mildly tense happens when I'm in a screening with Jamie, I like turn my head because I'm like, oh god. So I'm like, wait, is he gonna run in here and is he gonna do anything bad to Vision and the rest? Like I was like concerned, and then it didn't even happen, so you were fine. But like that just goes to show you, like the crumbs that were being laid were so thick that everybody's like, we have no idea where this is going. Mephisto is showing up. Everything's happening, babes. It's happening. Fire everything we have. That's what it felt like in 2021. Like I can't express enough. So yeah, they were taking us on a journey.
Well, let's get into it. Let's get into the Mephisto of it all. I honestly feel
Jesus.
like we wouldn't have had as many theories as we did if it wasn't for the line of the devil's in the details. That's not the only place he is. Because literally just rewatching these first 3 episodes in a vacuum, that feels like the only thing that really, really leans into the Mephisto of it all. And it's just so funny to note going from that to how much Mephisto became like a meme watching this show because everyone wanted him there.
It's so fun looking back because for me, okay, another thing about Emma Caulfield is best known for Buffy, and everyone knows that Buffy is my favorite show of all time. Yes, more than WandaVision, yes, more than Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'll just get that out here right now. When I say number one, I mean it. And having her in Marvel was just like, even in this small role, but what's funny is like we were just so certain she was somebody. She was like the definition of a red herring, and I felt bad for her on that press tour because she just like had to kind of kept lying, and but it was just take me back to being like, who, the devil, Mephisto every week. It was just, we were all Mephisto pilled. What a time to be alive.
Your point about Dottie and like hoping that she would be a character, because I know people were like, oh, she's going to be Mephisto, she's going to be somebody else. I was so dead set that she was going to be Arcana, who is kind of the Zatanna Scarlet Witch of the Squadron Supreme, because literally her husband has the same exact name, like down to the T. And I was like, oh, they're going to totally reveal that she is somehow secretly a witch from another dimension or just from the main MCU, and it just goes by the name of Arcana, because also Arcana has like multiple children and is kind of a housewife in addition to being a superhero. So I was so convinced that that was what they were going for, and then she ultimately, up until WandaVision itself, she was just a normal civilian, and that was kind of a bummer.
I'm gonna keep this really short, but strength to Eric Voss, who is still getting heckled for all the Mephisto stuff that occurred during this era, and rewatching it and thinking about where it goes and stuff, and like thinking about like how good the red herring is that they didn't intend. Because every time you talk to Jack Schaefer about this show, she says, oh, we never intended to do that, like we never even thought about it, like what are you talking about, like what? And like totally confused. Shackman too, being like, I'm glad people enjoyed it, but we never ever talked about it, which is just hysterical. So love and light to old Voss. He still be getting people like, oh, is this Mephisto situation again? I'm just like, he was just reading the clues. It's unfortunate. Sometimes, you don't realize that the Cooper is a tool that you need to tear up the carpet with. Sometimes you just don't know.
I understood that reference. I love that reference. Well, one thing that they did intend on is Glamour and Illusion, which are like the names that they take when they're doing the magic show. Those are Marvel characters in and of themselves. They were Wanda and Vision's neighbors in their first miniseries, I think in the 80s. And they are just ordinary stage magicians. And they kind of stick up for Wanda and Vision and help them when the town that they're all living in is kind of like, we don't like having these two superheroes here. And Glamour and Illusion have the realization of like, well, if they get run out of the town, we're the next weirdos. So we're going to get run out of the town too. So we need to be nice and stick up for them. But I love that they took on those names, because obviously those are characters we wouldn't need to see in the MCU anytime soon, but it was just a nice little nod. But yeah, that and Senior Scratchy of Agatha's cat, Bunny that she keeps mentioning, which, launches a million Nick Scratch theories, and going into Agatha, who knows?
It just never ends. Like if that actually happens, I want Voss to take like a massive because I thought the bunny would be something too. I thought for sure. I'm like, there's all that they gave the rabbit a name. Yeah, like it's featured prominently. One of the things about this show that you realize on a rewatch is that nothing is in center of frame that isn't like kind of important. Anything that they linger on for longer than 3 or 4 seconds, you should probably pay attention to. Like what's going on here. Like all the flashes to Agatha in the audience and her chattiness is there for a reason, which you realize on the and it's like, oh, it was just Captain Han being delightful. Maybe not. Go ahead, Jamie.
I also want to shout out the fact, not to bring up Buffy again, but there is a really good nod where Emma Caulfield's Buffy character, Anya, her number one character trait is basically that she's afraid of bunnies. She sings a whole song about it in the musical episode. So like Buffy fans, when she like had Senior Scratchy in that scene and was like being cool with the bunny, Buffy fans were freaking out. Like, Emma Caulfield with a bunny! And that was really fun for our side of the internet.
I love it. But yeah, we mentioned the commercials, the ticking bomb through line in all of these commercials is just so perfect. It's so good. Because it was The Watch. The Watch is the commercial for episode 2. Yeah, it just So good. I love the line of "We will lie to you and you will believe it." Like, obviously, that's Vision just being a little drunk off of the gum, but it kind of feels like the thesis statement for like so much of this show of just characters are just lying to each other in so many ways, as is revealed across the rest of the show. And we didn't even know what to believe, as evident by all of the theories that everybody had. I will say, if you gave me 100 guesses by episode 2 who Ralph would be, when Agatha keeps mentioning Ralph,
Oh boy.
never in a million years would I have guessed it's just Evan Peters being a slacker in like a beanbag chair in an attic. Like, that is just wild to me.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. That is not his real name. He's in witness protection. He was given that name, and that is why he laughs at his own name. And I will bring it up when we get to that episode. That is the hill I am dying on, but we're not there
We
yet.
made 35 minutes into the episode for Ralph Boner mentioned. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. It's just very the entirety. And also, who plays Dottie's husband? Does anyone know the actor's name?
I am totally blanking on it.
Shoot. Let me
Okay. He has some of the subtle, silliest stuff in the first two episodes that I really enjoy. If you're going in this sitcom mode, I'd have been like, oh yeah, you love that guy, man.
When the power goes out and he's like, oh, thank God. Like, that utterly delightful.
David Lengel is his name. David Lengel.
Okay. Shout out to you, guy. You was out here crushing it with your big mustache, just crushing weird little one-liners. Like, I prepared the roast. For 8 courses. Like, I was like, this is very funny the entire time.
I love that was my mother's piano.
Oh yeah. So good. And I just have to say, to wrap up episode 2, that last minute of the episode with the no and all of that, still it still hits. It still goes so hard. And I still love having moments like that where you legitimately don't know what to expect and everything is just so intense. I think that is just a brilliant note to end on for the episode.
But at the time, there was even disagreement on if it was really Sword or whatever. We didn't even know. Like, we were all like, well, that was weird, the beekeeper thing, and then the jump cuts and the helicopter. Obviously, something strange is going on, but we don't know what. And then to know what comes afterwards is like very enlightening. But I'm just like, imagine watching this again with no context and being like, what is happening? You know? But yeah, it's good.
Two more things I want to say about this episode. And the first is that Paul Bettany deserves his flowers for this one because he's so funny in this episode. Mm-hmm. Like, when we look back on the show, it's like all about what Elizabeth Olsen is doing because she's really doing something really special. And I love Kate Winslet. I think Mephisto's a very good show, but I'm still mad that she beat Elizabeth Olsen out of that Emmy because Elizabeth Olsen was doing comedy and drama so beautifully, threading that needle. But you know what? That's okay. We love you, Kate. Titanic's amazing. But Paul Bettany in this episode is seriously like next level, doing something fantastic that we don't normally get to see from him, especially as Vision. And the other thing, like, I'll just a little putting on my sitcom hat. The big ones for this episode is Bewitched is a really big one, and especially because Bewitched was a show that moved from black and white to color, I believe. And the set is kind of bewitchy in a way, but Wanda's style is very much Mary Tyler Moore in Dick Van Dyke Show. Like, it's like we're wearing pants now, and her hair is very Mary Tyler Moore. And there's a lot of other stuff going on, but those are the big ones that I shout out.
I love it. Any mention of Mary Tyler Moore, and I'm like, I'm there. I'm happy. So getting into episode 3, this was kind of true of every single episode in the series, but I found it really interesting in episode 3 once we kind of get into color. So cinematographer Jess Hall created a color palette of like 20 to 30 colors for each episode in order to keep things uniform and looking very TV-esque. And so in this episode, it was trying to lean into the pastels and making sure that every single color that was on screen fit this kind of pastel aesthetic, even as they were shooting it digital, which I think is really cool. As Aaron said, the assembled and any behind the scenes ephemera you can get about this show is so worth your time.
It's so peak. It's so good. I don't know. Like, it was a true delight to like live through and see all this and be like, oh my God, this is just amazing. Like you said, I'm going to rewatch that part of it now that you mentioned that.
And then writer Megan McDonnell researched the science of pregnancy to help make this episode more authentic. I feel like it kind of shows, especially when we get into like all of the fruit analogy and just the weirdness of Wanda's pregnancy. I feel like it helps to have that grounding when you're doing something that is like so heightened and is so frantic of over the course of one episode, she's then giving birth. Like, I think that she handled that really well.
It's also funny, like a sitcom staple is always the women hiding pregnancies because this happens a lot. Women have babies and they don't want to write the baby into a show because once you write a baby into a sitcom, it almost never works. Like truly, it is a killer. So when women are pregnant, they are in a sitcom, because they're always like carrying a big box. Or in the case of, I think it's the final season of Friends, they were like so over it that I believe Courtney Cox was pregnant and they were like, and her character, they established can't get pregnant, but like they were so over it, they're like, whatever, like she's just walking around, they like just ignored it. But a lot of times, like the goofiest stuff, I can't remember who and what is carrying around like a giant teddy bear, but it's you notice it happens in almost every sitcom where a woman is hiding a pregnancy.
It's either that or like you're behind a desk or behind a counter all the time. Like there's always something like that. I have to say the jump cuts in this episode, I am still just in awe of how well those are executed, of like when it kind of freezes and rewinds and everything. I remember watching this for the first time and thinking like, did my Disney Plus just glitch? Like this is the weirdest thing ever. And even like having that feeling rewatching it now, like that is just a sign of how effective that kind of editing technique is.
And I didn't notice at the time, but Paul Bettany looks right down the barrel of the camera as it happens before the jump cut. So I'm just like, oh, their whole family does it. Wow. I cannot wait. I cannot wait for Joe Locke to look right down the barrel of the camera and be like, oh.
In theory.
In theory. Allegedly.
Jamie, we need you to put on your Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. hat a little bit and explain the Hydra mind control soap.
Here we go. Honestly, a part of me is like, were they like, it's such a good Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reference that I feel like it's another mistake. Like they didn't know they were making an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reference. Because during the greatest arc of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the season 4 framework arc, where, they're all like kind of different. And Coulson is like a high school, like history teacher or something. And he's convinced that, because Hydra is like in control, and he's convinced that the soap is mind control. And so Coulson in the framework makes his own soap because he's so afraid that that Hydra soap is controlling. Like he's like this crazy conspiracy theorist, and it's fun to think that they did that on purpose. I really hope that they were like, yes, let's nod out this Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reference from season 4 to this very specific thing, because it had like there's a whole thing about the soap. And so the first time I saw this, I was literally like, what? And of course, then I was like, is Coulson gonna show up? Because that's how my brain works.
I love that. I love now knowing the context of that. I love Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. using very innocuous household items to have something sinister, because between that and like the fish oil in season 2, like that is just nuts to me that is a recurring thing. I love that so much. I just need to shout out Teyonah Parris in this episode. She is so good. I also, like, we talked about like going in with no prior knowledge and like imagine the world where you could do that. I remember Jack Schaefer talked about at the time how they kind of didn't want Teyonah's casting to be revealed at San Diego, but then it was, and it's like, well, we can't put that genie back in the bottle. But then they kind of tried to use it as like, well, if fans know that she is Monica, then they can be confused about why she's Geraldine in these episodes, and then that can be a twist in and of itself. But like, if we had known absolutely nothing whatsoever, and then we got to the end of this episode, the internet would have broken. Minds would have been blown with how that episode executes that storyline.
Also, she watched. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
I was gonna say it's like dark. It's a really intense scene. But please, Aaron.
Oh, I was gonna say she watched like Good Times and the Jeffersons to prepare for this, and you could really get a lot of like the Jeffersons sassy like maid housekeeper from her performance. And I want to say that she almost tried to like call the actress. I would need to look up name, and I pray that she's still with us, because like some of the funniest moments from that show are just her sassing at George and them sparring back and forth during it. So I really enjoyed all of that, and like just everybody in here, the comedic timing, the way that they navigate these very like funny situations. I know that duck or heron stork had to be very, very, very expensive. So it's like, we can't keep reanimating this. You gotta react to it like it's not here. Like, you know what I mean? We have to pay the handlers to like lead this stork through with like, I don't know, bread. It's a bird. I hope it eats bread. It's really kind of fascinating to have her, and then for her to be such a big part of everything as we go down the line. I hope we get more of Tiana Paris now. But at the time, just aces, and blue eyeshadow stock through the roof.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just love her outfit so much. Like, I have the sword necklace that she wears in this episode because I love it so much. I love that the big white sleeves are kind of the first homage that we got to her classic comic costume, and then obviously the second one is in the Marvels when she gets the gigantic sleeves and she like rips them off. But one day we'll get to something that's fully comic accurate. But in the meantime, I love that we're getting those little homages there. The "he was killed by Ultron" line I feel like hits even more this week. We'll get into obviously talking about that news on Wednesday, but it's funny now knowing that the Ultron stuff is going to circle its way back. I know Jamie's excited.
I mean, everyone knows Ultron's my fave. And my ongoing bit at home is like, I call James Spader Jimmy Spades because we're pals. I've never met the man. But, I do want to, because Aaron brought up the sitcom stuff. Marla Gibbs was the housekeeper in the Jeffersons.
Yeah.
And I did just look it up, and she's 93. She's kicking it. She's still alive.
Wow.
That's right.
And yeah. But there's a lot of the influences of those shows that Aaron mentioned too. But this episode is obviously all about the Brady Bunch. And a fun fact about me is that I consider myself a bit of a Brady Bunch connoisseur. When I was in high school, I would be like, I can name all the actors in the Brady Bunch, which is not that impressive, but I thought it was so cool. Look at me. A couple friends of mine recently went to a trivia night, and they didn't know it was Brady Bunch themed, and they were telling me about it, and they were like, "This was a question." I was like, "Oh, it's this answer." I'm sad I missed that. The Brady Bunch to me, it has always been a deeply fascinating. The behind the scenes stuff with that show was weird. They had that weird rivalry with the Partridges, like behind the scenes. Everything about it is just, it's bizarre because what they're displaying in the Brady Bunch is like this really happy, weird, it's just like this perfect family and it's almost creepy, but it's also so charming, and everything about it. And this house looks very similar to their house. But one of my favorite little nods is the doll that Vision is playing with is a Kitty Carryall doll, which is Cindy's doll in the Brady Bunch. It's the same doll, and she always has that Kitty Carryall doll in the Brady Bunch, and there's like a whole episode about Tiger the dog steals it, and Bobby gets blamed, and then Bobby uses his money to buy a new Kitty Carryall doll, like all this stuff. And so when WandaVision was announced, I knew I was waiting. I was just waiting for the Brady Bunch stuff to come because it just brings me. I forgot I have a Brady Bunch cookie jar that I meant to have available to show you all, but it's in the other room. I forgot to bring it in. But yeah, love it.
I love it. I love that so much. Aaron, do you have anything to add about episode 3?
The intros even have some of the weird stuff starting to seep into them here this time around too, because Agatha is the person that sells Elizabeth Olsen some of the kids' clothes that I did not catch the last time around. And I'm like, this woman had a lot of jobs. You should have been very, very, very suspicious. There was little crumbs all the entire time. Like, what's going on? Besides being a delight. And she's only in this for 3 minutes, 4 minutes max, right?
Probably.
This episode?
Yeah.
We get the wink though.
Funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do get that. Are we at the end of the episode too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Herb and that freaking fence at the time, strange, don't know what's going on. Now, of course, it reads that, oh yes, he gets to break through for a second too, but obviously forces beyond his control stop him, and Herb is coming back. Herb will return. So that's fun as well. I'm laughing. I did not know about Jenna's high evolutionary theory. I would have been hitting that hopium real hard with you. That's insane. So
You've heard of
Hitting it
copium. Now
hard.
you heard of hopium. I was so
Hitting it
convinced
hard.
again because everything was a red herring in the show, and then the things that were obvious were presented otherwise. Of like everyone knew Agnes was eventually going to become Agatha. Like unless you completely did not know who the character was in the comics, I feel like you kind of felt like that reveal was inevitable. But then there were so many other characters where it's like this could be something, this could be somebody, and there was enough compelling evidence to like latch onto. And so yeah, Arcana and High Evolutionary were mine too, where it was like I will die on this hill that they're in the show, and ultimately that did not happen, but it was still a great time. So
because the chat's talking about it, I want to shout out back in the OG Phase Zero days where Jim Viscardi kept thinking that James Spader was going to show up as Paul Bettany's sitcom dad, like it as a human. And that was the one for me that I was like, that's amazing. I want Jimmy Spades. Yes. And it was such a good theory that I was convinced that it was going to happen, especially because a lot of people know James Spader because he was in like the season 8 of The Office. Like he has his own sitcom history, which is so funny. Like when people are like, oh, James Spader from The Office. I'm like, what? Who from what? Like, come on. Look into James Spader's career history. I'm begging you. Anyway, I want to shout out some of the original theories that were going around way back in the day.
That was a good theory. Like I do remember just being in the audience at that point and totally believing that that could happen. I like we'll get into it with episode 4 and like the very special guest of it all, but I totally did expect like James Spader to walk in and be like, "Hey son, it's like it's your grandpa coming in from out of town." So, but yeah, that'll be for the next episode when we talk about 4 through 6. Does anyone else have anything else to add about these 3 episodes?
The outside the hex at the end too is insane. What a preposterous swerve if you don't know what's going. Like I remember, like we were like, okay, so just throw all the notes we have out. No one knows what's going on. Like we don't know if that's would be shield or sword outside. We don't know if someone else is gonna just take poor Tiana Paris's character out of the woodwork. It was a time. That stuff too was really wild. Just to look back on and be like, could you imagine? Like every time, like this was really like like a moment. Watching it at midnight because I think it might have been my first couple of months of working on the days with everybody was an experience because you just get on Twitter and be like, what's going on? And everybody just running around like, oh my god, and Brandon being like, oh my goodness, what do we have to talk about tomorrow? And I'd be like, can't wait.
No one was working harder in the WandaVision era than Brandon. That's for sure.
Yeah, for real.
The wheels were turning.
Absolutely.
I've complained about this before on the show, but I feel like this is my time to complain about it again. And it is that I waited so long for some of these Disney Plus shows to come on Blu-ray. And I was so excited when WandaVision and Loki, and I've got Obi-Wan. And the fact that these Blu-rays do have the recaps just like Disney Plus before every episode drives me crazy. I just watch them on Disney Plus because at least on Disney Plus I can skip a recap. I'm binging the show. I don't need a recap. The fact that the DVDs don't give you an option to just play the next episode or play it all together or anything, it genuinely, like, who do I talk to? Feige? Iger, I know you're our friend. What, like, who is designing these Blu-ray methods? It's so bad. It's so ridiculous.
I feel like if anything, WandaVision is the one show that could get away with doing that, even on like a physical media thing, like given the sitcom of it all. But yeah, if it's like Obi-Wan or Loki, I feel like you don't need that. Yeah, that's wild. Well, all right. Well, we're going to take another 1-minute break. And when we come back, we are going to give a review score out of 10, the official Phase Zero review score. I have a feeling it's going to be pretty positive. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Phase Zero. If you're just now joining us, we are in our WandaVision rewatch, part 1. And so that is the first 3 episodes of this season. We're getting ready for Agatha. We're getting ready for the Vision show that's on the horizon and just so many other things. It is now time for us to give a review score for these first 3 episodes. I know this is the first time we've done this for like a chunk of episodes and not just a single movie or a single thing, but I have a feeling that that is part of what will make it fun. Aaron, you're at the top of the board. What do you think?
Are we doing 1, then 2, then 3? Is that how we're doing this?
I would say just for simplicity's sake, maybe like an average. But if you want to talk about individually how you feel,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, the average is at 8. I'm high. I'm a lot higher on the black and white episodes of WandaVision than like I feel like a large section of your audience because of what we talked about earlier. It effectively lays the groundwork that you know what, we're not in Kansas anymore. We're hoping that there's not going to be a beam of light at the end of this thing in this era, in this first 3 episodes of it. Sparkling performances from Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany and the cast of characters. Catherine Hahn, where you've been all my life. I just really, really enjoyed it. And there's like, if I were to start someone new on the MCU, you would have to put WandaVision into the package that you would give them, along with the more action-oriented things. I believe that's how strong this is. So yeah, absolutely 8.
Jamie, what about you?
Oh, this is where I'm missing BD so much because I just want to fight for a 5 score, and but we're left with his legacy, and his legacy is a 10 score.
Yes,
and I listen. What can I say? It's a 10. They're gonna all be 10. Spoiler alert. This is I wouldn't be my true authentic self if I was giving it anything less. Like, we're not here to review this in any capacity other than our personal capacity, and it's a 10. A 10, a 1 score for each time I've seen these episodes. Like, I just I love it so much, and my truth is a 10.
I love it. I would have expected nothing less, honestly. If you had anything other than a 10, I would have been like, is Jamie okay? Like, Jamie must have a very good reason. I'm probably at, I'm going to say like a 9.5. I definitely, these are the 3 episodes that I think I have the most fondness for, not having rewatched them in the longest time. I'm very curious to rewatch the remainder of the season and see how I still feel about some of those episodes. But I feel like the promise and the just technical craft of these first 3 episodes was just so special. Like, we did not know anything about what was on the horizon. As we've said this whole show, we had so many theories about things. A lot of them didn't pan out, but it was just so much fun experiencing this for what it was as the show got progressively crazier down the line. So yeah, I'm at a 9.5. So I'm going to add those all together and then divide by 3. So the official Phase Zero review score for these first 3 episodes of WandaVision is a 9.16. So we're going to round up to a 9.2. I think that is pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
See,
so
people were like, y'all are going to do 10. It's just going to be 10. Why are we even doing this? And look at this. Wow. Look at that.
Who would have thought?
The only real journalists.
Well, that's it for our first WandaVision episode. I think this has been a lot of fun. We are going to do episodes for the other remaining 6 episodes of the show. I think splitting this into thirds is definitely the way to go because, as we could see this week, there's just so much to talk about with each episode. And we will figure out the schedule of that soon. We have some spotlight episodes that are on the horizon and some other things, so we haven't locked down a schedule just yet. But before we get to Agatha, we will have rewatched all of WandaVision. I can promise you that. Jamie, do you have anything you would like to leave the listeners with today?
Yeah, thanks everyone who's listening, enjoying in the chat. It really made me happy to see a couple people say that their kids wanted to watch old sitcoms. Like, we didn't shout out the Addams Family, but that's obviously in there too. And like, sometimes I worry about like old stuff and it getting lost in like the streaming era. Truly, because kids in our day, we had to watch what was on. And now kids can just watch the same Bluey episodes over and over and over again. And so that makes me happy that this show could bring younger generations into, because this stuff is obviously older than us. I hope you don't think I was alive when Bewitched was on, guys.
She's a witch. She's a witch.
So that really, really makes me happy. And I also, follow me on Letterboxd at Jamie Girac. I just logged my 400th movie of the year. So that's really exciting. Follow me.
Aaron might have been around when Bewitched was on. Time travel and all of that. As we've established, Aaron is time travel.
Wow.
Aaron, do you have anything the listeners with. Okay.
I'm like
Travel.
Hornet, and I'm an aerospace engineer. You on Twitter at absolutely Hornet. I don't have that much to plug. Our buddies over at Agents of Fandom were up at Fan Expo Canada, getting all of the talking points from all these people, all these famous people, MCU people, all that stuff. So their feed has been crucial for me to look at and see if anybody said anything really cool, really juicy here this weekend. And yeah, just excited to be on the way to Agatha. Rewatching these is so funny. I know there's people listening that are like, you have so much different energy for this than those X-Men movies. I'm like, and I do. And I really.
Going off of that, thank you to everyone who listened to our episode last Wednesday. I know we got so many nice tweets, so many nice comments as we were doing the show live. Thank you so much to everyone who has supported us over the past week. Like, that means the world. Thank you for joining us for this episode today. This has been so much fun. I'm at Hey It's Jenna Lynn on social media. As always, go read some comics. We will be back on Wednesday with a regular news show where we'll talk about the Ultron news and we'll talk about whatever other craziness might have happened in the Marvel world. As Aaron said, probably some of those Fan Expo quotes, but I'm sure there's probably going to be some sort of post-credit scene today. So we'll have stuff to talk about on Wednesday. So be sure to join us for that. Play the show for your mom, play the show for your dog, and we shall see you then. Bye.